What really went on in David Cassidy's once glamorous life when the doors were closed. Cassidy's story is both interesting and sad. She went from being a teen heartthrob to a personal sadness. What happened to his empty house, the people he left behind, and the things he left behind from his last days? Explore the ups and downs of a star who had everything until it all went away. David Cassidy told a brave and deeply personal secret in 2008. He admitted in public that he had been having problems with drinking. That event changed his life forever. It was the start of a new episode where he faced his long-hidden demons. Cassidy had a charming, talented, and energetic public image that she kept up for years. Mostly known for being the hero Keith Partridge on the TV show The Partridge Family. He had been fighting inner demons that he mostly kept from the public, even though he was famous and flashy in the entertainment world. Cassidy not only asked for help when he admitted he had a drinking problem, he also joined a long list of famous people who have been honest and open in order to get better. Fans and people in the entertainment business were worried and supportive when he told them about it in 2008. Many said they hoped the once-loved teen star would find peace and get better. In the years that followed, though, Cassidy's problems would continue to make the news, including a number of events that showed how bad his addiction was and how his health was getting worse. By 2017, these worries had hit a big point. Cassidy was playing in Agora Hills, California on February 20th that year, when people in the crowd noticed something strange. The singer, who had been singing the same hits for almost 50 years, was having trouble remembering the words to songs he had known for most of his career. At one point, he looked lost on stage and seemed to stumble and almost fall. Everyone in the audience, including Cassidy himself, was upset by the show. They had come to remember happy times from the past. Soon after, Cassidy told everyone something that would add a sad twist to his story. He told them that he had been diagnosed with dementia, the same illness that his mother and grandpa had had as they got older. He said that deep down, he had always been afraid this would happen, even though he had tried to deny it for a while. Cassidy told it like it was, "I was in denial, but I always knew this was going to happen." With this diagnosis, Cassidy also said he was giving up performance. Given how much his personality had been tied to music and entertainment, it was a very emotional choice. It must have been painful for the man who had been one of the biggest pop culture stars of the 1970s to think about leaving the stage. But it was also a clear and accepting moment when he realized that his health had to come first, and that he could no longer act. David Cassidy's health suddenly and dramatically got worse in late 2017. This was just a few months after he made the sad news that he was fighting dementia and retiring from performing. He got very sick at work in a recording studio and was rushed to the hospital. The event was very dangerous to life. He had been asleep for a few days and was very close to dying. It was a stark reminder of how fragile his health had become, even more so than the dementia he had already said he had. When Cassidy called an A&E director who had been working with him on a documentary after he got out of the hospital, he told them everything. The call was honest and woke me up. Cassidy told them that he had just talked to his doctor and got terrible news. He had liver disease, which is often caused by drinking too much booze over a long period of time. He talked about how the event had made him more aware of his own death and said, "My life has changed dramatically." He talked about being close to dying and being asleep for the first few days in the hospital. He also talked about slowly waking up and remembering things, which might have seemed like a sign of hope in a very bad situation. But what happened next might have been even stranger and more painful. Cassidy admitted that what he had said earlier about having dementia was not fully true. He said, "At this point in my life, there were no signs of dementia." He had been severely booze poisoned when he was on stage in February and had forgotten the words, been lost, and been stumbling. "I also lied about how much I drank." Cassidy thought it was a terrible statement from a man who had been telling everyone and his own family for a long time that he had stopped drinking. In that honest moment, Cassidy took off the last coat of denial and told the truth about how his addiction had led to his downfall. "You know, I did it to myself, man. I did it to myself to cover up the sadness and the emptiness," he said. It broke my heart to hear him say that. His words showed how decades of pain and loneliness had not been fully healed by fame, love, or even music. Being honest like this gave us a rare and painful look into the personal pain that often lies beneath the fame. After that, Cassid's health got even worse in November of that same year. He was taken to the hospital again on November 18th, this time in very bad shape because his liver and kidneys were failing. They put him into a coma with medicine, and the outlook for him was not good. After 2 days, he came out of the coma, for a short time. He was in very bad shape, but he was stable enough that doctors thought he might be able to stay alive long enough to get a liver transplant. But he didn't have time on his side. David Cassidy died on November 21, 2017, because his stomach did not work right. He was 67 years old. After Cassid's death, his daughter Katie Cassidy told a very moving story about the last moments of her father's life. She said that his last words were, "So much wasted time." It was a haunting epitaph from a man who had known both the heights and depths of fame and addiction. He had captivated millions but fought to find peace in his own life. Those simple, honest, and deeply human words showed the sorrow of a lifetime spent looking for something that may not have fully filled the void inside. Allow us to now talk about David Cassid's property. Former teen idol and star of the Partridge Family David Cassidy made a big real estate move in 2001 when he bought a fancy waterfront home in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Cassidy paid $1.1 million for the land at 1600 South Ocean Drive, which was a big investment at the time and showed his desire to create a peaceful and high-class getaway. The farm, which was in a private area and had a wide view of the Intracoastal Waterway, became both a safe place for Cassidy to relax and a symbol of the wealth and success that had shaped much of his early career. The Mediterranean-style house, which was originally 6,500 square feet, became the center of Cassidy's big plans to renovate and add on to it. The house grew to over 7,000 square feet thanks to his plans, which combined traditional building styles with modern luxury. Cassidy gave the property the name Casa de Mayan, which made him feel proud and may have even had a mystical meaning. It wasn't just a house. A man who used to be at the top of pop culture made a statement with that thought. There were many high-end features and amenities in the house that made it feel like a private getaway. It had 6 bedrooms and 6.5 baths, and each one was carefully made to be comfortable and stylish. Cassidy could keep up with his workouts without ever having to leave the house thanks to an exercise room. A private office with a fireplace gave him a quiet place to read, write, or do business. One thing that made Casa de Mayan stand out was how well it combined indoor and outdoor life. The estate had a heated pool and spa, which were perfect for Florida's warm weather all year, as well as an outdoor kitchen that made having friends over a natural part of the Cassidy lifestyle. He loved fishing, and a private dock with a 10,000-pound boat lift gave him easy access to the water and all the fun things it had to offer. The house inside showed Cassidy's personal tastes and background. The estate felt much more personal than a normal celebrity home thanks to the autographed photos, gold records, and family crest throw pillows that were placed around the rooms. Every room seemed to whisper stories about Cassidy's life, his accomplishments, his loves, and the events that were most important to him. But by the middle of the 2000s, Cassidy's money problems were getting worse. Legal fees, health problems, and a long fight with alcoholism had worn him down over the years. When Cassidy filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2015, he said that his debts and responsibilities were much higher than his assets. Casa de Mayan, the most valuable property in his portfolio, was put up for sale. When the estate was first put on the market for $4.5 million, it was hard to find someone ready to pay that much, especially since Cassidy's public problems cast a shadow over the sale. In the end, the property was sold at auction for about $2 million, which was a big drop from what it was originally listed for, and a sad reminder of Cassidy's financial problems. Even though things were tough, the house kept a lot of its charm and unique personality. Instead of being raised or changed in big ways, the house was turned into a high-end vacation rental. It kept some Cassidy memorabilia as a tribute to the man who used to own it and his memory. Cassidy had died the previous year, so Cassidy was put on the market again in 2018, this time for $3.9 million. The house was now part of pop culture history. It was more than just a house. It was filled with the spirit of a man who had made millions of people happy, even as he fought his own problems. People who liked Cassidy's music got a look into the personal life of a star whose highs and lows were just as dramatic and memorable as the songs he used to sing on stage. Cassidy David Cassidy owned both a large waterfront estate and a condo in Fort Lauderdale. The condo was smaller than his waterfront estate, but it was still an important part of his real estate business. The apartment was in a desirable part of the city and provided a nice place to live in a busy, high-class area. However, this land would come to represent Cassidy's problems with money in the later years of his life, just like many of the other things he had to deal with. Cassidy's money problems became known to the public in the early 2000s, but one of the most important parts of his fight with debt didn't happen until 2012. By that time, Cassidy had been under increasing financial stress for years, which was made worse by his personal problems, such as court issues and health problems. His income had dropped from when he was at the top of his game to almost nothing, and his bills had gotten out of hand. Cassidy probably bought the house as another investment in his effort to live a comfortable life, but it ended up being a huge drain on his finances. After a long and heated argument with his mortgage lenders, Cassidy found himself in a tough spot in 2012. He had so much debt that it was impossible for him to pay it all, including the mortgage. He had no choice but to give up the condo to the bank. It wasn't easy to make this choice. It was a last-ditch attempt to keep the finances from getting worse. In exchange for giving up the house, Cassidy made a deal with the bank that would forgive his debt. To be more specific, the $920,000 he still owed on the debt was forgiven. Many thanks for the money, but it was also a sad and happy time in Cassidy's life. The house, which had once been a sign of wealth and comfort, was now too expensive for him to keep up. The choice for Cassidy to give up the condo wasn't just about money. It was a time for self-reflection. That person used to be a heartthrob and a popular name, so the thought of losing a house to a bank was very different from how people saw him before. It was a stark reminder of how far he had dropped from being rich and famous. Even though the setup had some bad feelings attached to it, it also made people feel better. Even though the truth of his money problems would haunt him for years to come, it helped him get rid of some of his debt and give himself a chance to start over. Cassidy had been having money problems for a long time, and his choice to give up the condo was another sign of that. He had early success as a pop star and actor, but he had been bad at managing his money, didn't plan his finances well, and felt pressured to live an expensive lifestyle that was getting harder and harder to afford. Cassidy famously lost a lot of money because she spent too much and didn't get good financial help. This happens to a lot of famous people who become rich quickly, but don't know how to handle their money in the long term. Cassidy's bills and bad money choices caught up with him by 2012. He owned several properties to try to keep up a comfortable standard of living, but this made him exposed to the kind of financial collapse that can happen when fame fades and income drops. He used to be a well-known figure, but now he wasn't able to afford to live that way. Losing the home was just one more example of his financial problems. David Cassidy's personal life was just as difficult and up and down as his work life. He was married several times, had many relationships, and had a hard time raising his children. He got married to actress Kay Lent for the first time on April 3, 1977. The two seemed to be very close, but after 6 years of marriage, they split up. Their divorce was completed on December 28, 1983. Even though their relationship didn't last long, it showed how Cassidy was trying to balance his work with his personal happiness at the time. But the stresses of fame and the problems in their own lives caused them to split up. In 1984, Cassidy got married again. This time, it was to horse breeder Mariel Tanz, just 1 year after his split from Lenz. They had met 10 years before at a horse sale in Lexington, Kentucky, in 1974. The couple's love of horses probably helped them become closer. They were married for 4 years before getting a divorce in 1988. Due to his fame at the time, Cassidy's second marriage, like his first, was watched by a lot of people. But the stress of keeping a private life while being watched by a lot of people seemed to get to her again. Cassidy had his daughter, Katie Cassidy, with fashion model Cher Williams while he was married for the second time in 1986. But they were only together for a short time and broke up after Katie was born. Williams and Cassidy's extramarital affair made things difficult for his daughter, who was mostly raised by her mother and stepfather, Richard Benedin. Katie's lack of Cassidy in her life would come up again and again over the next few years. And Cassidy was honest about his problems with being a dad and his part in Katie's life. Cassidy said in a very public conversation in February 2017 that he had never really gotten to know Katie, saying, "I've never had a relationship with her. I wasn't her father. Even though I was her biological father, I didn't raise her. She has a whole different life now. I'm proud of her. She's so bright. It's hard for me to believe she's all grown up." Cassidy's words were a painful admission of the emotional distance between him and his daughter. Cassidy was proud of her work in Hollywood, but they had never really had a father-daughter connection. The hole that his absence had left in their lives would never go away. On March 30th, 1991, Cassidy married songstress Sue Schiff for the third time. This union seemed to give Cassidy a sense of stability and hope, and in 1991 they had a son named Beau. Cassidy had tried 3 times to get married before, but Schiffron had already been married. Cassidy's personal life seemed to be in balance for a while. But even though they had a son together and had been married for a long time, this marriage would have its problems. Cassidy's publicist in Los Angeles stated in August 2013 that he and Schiffron were no longer together. After making this statement, Schiffron filed for divorce in February 2014, ending their relationship of more than 20 years. Many people were shocked by the breakup because they thought Cassidy had found a long-term partner in Chiron. The split also made it clear that Cassidy has a hard time keeping relationships that last. During this time in his life, Cassidy also moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida in 2002, which was a big change for him. He chose a quieter life away from the Los Angeles attention, which meant that he had to change the way he lived. Even though Cassidy had a lot of problems in his personal life, he seemed to enjoy his new life in Florida. It gave him the peace and quiet he needed to focus on his health and himself. There's something that not many people know. David Cassidy's problems with alcohol were well known and had a big impact on both his personal and work life. Many people knew about his problems with drugs, which caused a lot of trouble in his work and personal relationships. His legal problems, with driving while impaired, DUI, made his problems even worse. Cassidy was arrested for DUI for the first time on November 3, 2010, in Florida. He had been drinking too much and things were getting out of hand, so this arrest was a bad turn in his life. At the time of his arrest, Cassidy was having a lot of personal problems, and this arrest showed how unstable his life was becoming. The specifics of what happened were not widely covered, but it showed that Cassidy was having more and more problems with drug abuse and the dangers of driving while drunk. Even though Cassidy wasn't facing any serious legal consequences right away, this arrest was an early sign that his addiction was making it hard for him to function in daily life. In August 2013, Cassidy was caught again for DUI in Shodak, New York. This time it was back in 2009. Cassidy was arrested after being pulled over for not turning off his headlights when he drove past a police car going the other way. During the stop, Cassidy did badly on a field sobriety test, so the police gave him a breath test to see how much alcohol was in his system. The amount of alcohol in Cassidy's blood was 0.10%, which is more than the allowed limit in New York of 0.08%. Tom Jones, the cop who arrested Cassidy, later said that Cassidy was polite and helpful during the stop. In a light-hearted moment, Cassidy joked with the officer, asking, "What's new, pussycat?" in reference to the hit song by singer Tom Jones. From 1965, however, the importance of the situation could not be denied. Cassidy was arrested and taken to jail. After being held for a while, he was freed on $20,500 bail. This arrest added to the growing list of legal issues he was having because of his drinking, showing that he couldn't keep his drinking under control. Cassidy was in trouble with the law for what he did. He also had to do community work, pay a fine, and have his driver's license taken away for 6 months on May 12, 2015. The DUI charge hurt his public image even more, making him look like an unstable person whose problems with addiction were getting harder to avoid. After only a few months, on January 10, 2014, Cassidy was arrested again, this time in California. This happened after Cassidy turned right against a red light, which is against the law. When he was pulled over, he was again thought to be driving while drunk. Someone thought Cassidy was drunk and arrested her. She was held overnight in jail. The judicial consequences were worse this time. He was put on probation for 5 years and had to go through inpatient rehabilitation as part of his punishment. The fact that Cassidy had to go to inpatient rehab showed how bad his drinking problem was, and the probationary time made it clear that he would have to deal with legal and personal consequences. In 2015, the number of DUI charges and legal problems kept going up. Cassidy was given tickets in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on September 9th for a number of different crimes. Driving with a suspended license, leaving the scene of an accident, and changing lanes improperly were some of the claims. This was another worrisome sign that Cassidy couldn't stay out of trouble with the law, and it made the problems he was already having because he was abusing drugs even worse. These different events were not one-time things. They pointed to a bigger pattern in Cassidy's life. His problems with alcohol hurt not only his personal life, but also his career, and they hurt his public image and name. Cassidy fell out of favor after some problems with drugs. She used to be a popular teen star and a big name in pop culture. His problems with the law were a painful reminder of how drug abuse hurts not only his job, but also his relationships and his ability to live a healthy, stable life. Even with these problems, Cassidy did try to deal with his problems. His arrests, court cases, and public statements that he had problems with alcohol showed that he was dealing with the effects of the decisions he had made in the past. No matter how hard Cassidy tried to change his life and deal with the results of his actions, his problems would not go away. Eventually, they led to more personal and health problems. His DUI charges and legal problems were a big part of the sad story of his later years. A man trying to accept the results of his actions while also dealing with the difficulties of fame, addiction, and taking responsibility for his actions. The exciting world of show business and the complicated relationships in David Cassidy's family shaped his early years. Cassidy was born in New York City on April 12, 1950, at Flower Fifth Avenue Hospital. He was the son of 2 famous people in the show business. Many people knew his father as an actor and singer named Jack Cassidy, and many people knew his mother as an actress named Evelyn Ward. Both of his parents were very involved in the performing arts, with Jack Cassidy becoming famous for his work on Broadway and in TV shows. David would spend a lot of time in the entertainment business, but his formative years were not at all normal for a child growing up in that kind of setting. Jack Cassidy's father was half Irish and half German, and Evelyn, Cassidy's mother, was mostly from colonial America, but also had some Irish and Swiss roots. Her family had a long history in the United States, Some of her relatives helped to build Newark, New Jersey. Cassid's father's family had a stronger ties to the entertainment business, but his mother's family had a more traditional American background that went back to the country's early days. Even though Cassid's parents came from very different backgrounds, his childhood was shaped by the fact that both of them were musicians and often toured and performed on the road. Because of their jobs, Cassid's parents were often away, so Frederick and Ethel Ward, David's maternal grandparents, raised him most of the time. In West Orange, New Jersey, they lived in a middle-class area. That's where David spent most of his childhood. Even though Cassidy's parents weren't there, this situation gave him a more stable home life. His grandparents were very important to his early growth because they gave him care and stability when his parents weren't around. Their care for Cassidy made sure he had a pretty normal childhood, even though he was always aware of how famous his parents were. There was more going on between Cassidy and his parents than just the fact that they lived far away and were busy. David made a shocking finding in 1958 when he was only 8 years old. It changed the way he thought about his family forever. Hearing from kids in the neighborhood, he found out that his parents had been separated for more than 2 years, which shocked him. David didn't know how to deal with the news that his parents were splitting up because they hadn't told him. His parents had been busy with their jobs and had kept such an important fact from him. This was the start of a series of emotional problems that would affect his relationship with his family for years to come. Cassid's life became confusing and disappointing when he learned that his parents were getting a divorce. The fact that his parents didn't tell him the truth about their divorce probably changed how he thought about family ties and trust. As the child of divorce, Cassidy had to deal with a lot of difficult emotions. She had a hard time balancing the idea of a perfect family with the fact that her parents were no longer together. This dissonance would later play a part in Cassidy's personal problems throughout his life, such as his unstable relationships, fights with addiction, and trouble figuring out where he fit in the world. The confusing way David Cassid's family worked had a big effect on his relationship with his dad, Jack Cassidy. Michael David Cassidy was only 6 years old when his famous singer and actress mother, Shirley Jones, married Jack Cassidy in 1956. Their marriage was the start of a new part of David's life, one in which he got a mom and 3 half-brothers: Shaw, born in 1958, Patrick, born in 1962, and Ryan, born in 1966. The addition of these brothers changed Cassid's childhood even more. His family life became more complicated as the family grew. Around the year 1968, when he was 18, David made a big move, both physically and figuratively. He finished high school by going to one last session of summer school to get the points he needed for his diploma. Soon after, David moved into the rental house that his father and Shirley Jones owned in Irvington, New York. His half-brothers were already living there. This was a turning point in David's life because he was now trying to make a living in the show business while also taking care of his family. During his time at the Irvington house, he worked toward 2 different goals. He worked hard to become a famous musician and actor, but he also had to pay the bills. That's why he worked half-days in the mailroom of a clothing company. David's early adult years were shaped by the stress of balancing these 2 different worlds, his desire for fame and the need to have a normal job. Cassid's move to Irvington was hard for him, but it was also the start of his working life in Hollywood. David's dad, Jack Cassidy, was a big part of getting him his first steps toward fame. As a successful actor himself, Jack used his connections in the business to put David in touch with Ruth Aarons, who would become his first manager. Aarons was a former table tennis champion who had become a talent agent. She had worked with both Jack Cassidy and Shirley Jones for many years. Over time, she also worked with David's half-brother Shaw Cassidy, who went on to become a famous actor and musician in his own right. Ruth Aarons quickly became an important part of David Cassid's job, both at work and in his personal life. She not only helped him with his work, but they also became good friends. David was taken under Aarons's wing and helped him find his way in the tough world of show business. In the beginning of his work, David Cassidy had both good times and bad times, especially with the Partridge Family. He made a small amount of money working for Screen Gems, the company that made the show during the first season. But Aaron quickly found a major mistake in his contract. David wasn't old enough to sign it the first time. This finding changed everything, and Arentz used her power and knowledge to get his contract renegotiated. With her help, David's contract was changed to have much better terms, such as better financial protection and an unusual 4-year term for a contract at that time. David's financial position got a lot better after this renegotiation. It was also the start of his rise to fame, as the Partridge Family became a huge hit in the early 1970s. What do you think about David Cassidy? Please tell us what you think in the box below. We hope this video was helpful for you. Kindly click like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the video. Glad you watched, and see you in the next film. Thank you.